Good afternoon, everybody. How are you all? Good. I recognize some of you. I know Corral played volleyball. I know Serenity played volleyball. My daughter is Lexi Lamb, and she's a seventh grader here. Okay, and thank you, Mrs. McPherson, for inviting me here. And like she said, I'm an engineer, and I'm specifically a structural engineer. Okay, and before we get into that, I'll tell you about who I am. Like I said, my name's Daniel Lamb. My parents live here. I was born in Hobbs. I was here at Taylor Middle School, just like you all. My wife, I'm married. She works at Lee County, and I have another daughter, so two daughters here. And really, just like all of you, I was in here doing this, trying to figure out, what I was going to do, going through the motions. And really, my grandparents still live here. I have two grandparents in Lovington, which is kind of crazy. So really, my mom is from Mexico, which is kind of, I don't think a lot of people knew that. And so I speak some Spanish, but not as good as a lot of you do, probably. So let's get into what I do. So I'm a structural engineer, and what I really do is design the structure for buildings mostly. So a lot of structural engineers, really what they end up doing is either buildings or bridges. But guess what? Here in Lovington and New Mexico, we don't have a lot of bridges, so we mostly do buildings, like this building here, right? And so some other things that I design are retaining walls and signs and whatnot. And so for a building, what we mostly design is the structure, which would be the foundation, and then the framing above, and then the roof framing, and we put it together. So really, my number one client is usually an architect or a contractor. And my dad's a contractor. So growing up, I would try to help him. And luckily, now I'm asked about construction and how to design buildings, so that helped me out a lot. Actually, what's kind of interesting, when I was your age, more than 25 years ago, like 30 years ago, this was a shop, and I was in this class, and now it's a tech lab, so it's kind of strange to be back here. It's pretty funny. But so I grew up doing construction, and it helped me in what I do because I work with contractors to get things built. And so to kind of tell you about building design, what happens first is an architect comes in and draws up some buildings with the sizes and colors and what they want it to look like and who's going to be in there. Is it a bathroom or a kitchen or a restaurant? And then after they get that done, they get it to the rest of the design team, different engineers. So there's different disciplines involved in this building, for instance, in most buildings. So the architect would draw up the floor plans and what it looks like size-wise. This could be 2 stories, 3 stories, have a basement, who knows. And then what they need is someone like me to do the structure. So we tell them how strong the walls need to be, how big the footings are, what kind of joists we need. And there are other engineers involved because we have the heaters hopefully working, right? And the air conditioning, those are mechanical engineers that do that. And look at all the power we need, so the lights and the power, electrical engineers design those. And so it takes a team of engineers and designers to put it all together. And we have to work together to make sure that everyone else's discipline works, because y'all don't want to be in a room that's freezing cold or too hot, or you know what, I think of the gym running laps and it's like hot in there. I want it to be nice and cool and a nice gym and have everything working how you need it to function how it was designed for, whatever it was designed for. So one thing about engineering that's kind of interesting is that when I went into engineering, I didn't know what the difference was. I'll be honest with you, when I was your age, I didn't really even know what about engineering as much as it's talked about today. So it's kind of an odd thing to know, and I think it took me going through college to even realize what the differences are. And so the reason I ended up a structural engineer is when I went to college, I took a class and it had truss analysis. And I used to help my dad put up trusses on houses. And so I kind of, hey, I know what that is. And so I kind of took a liking to it, and I ended up studying that discipline. And for some reason, I don't do well like with electrical engineering. I don't like thinking about power and circuits and whatnot. I had to take a class to pass like my college degree, but I don't really like electrical engineering. I think all of you are getting a lot better prepared to do electrical and computer and all those types of engineering. So anyways, so to kind of step back and tell you exactly how it worked out for me is, I liked sports and work in construction and whatnot, but I was really good at school. So I got scholarships and looked around, but my parents weren't engineers. They're teachers. And so as I started looking into what I was good at, I tended to do good at it. That's all that happened, really. And so I went to college, took the truss analysis class, and kind of ended up in structural engineering. And ended up like doing construction, and it worked out because that's what my dad used to make me do. So all these things that are hilarious, like I used to get kind of tired and thinking like my dad, I have to help him pour concrete and fix that and all that. Well, guess what? It's actually valuable to me now, So it's kind of interesting, how these things work out. And to talk about engineering in the profession, one thing that it takes is, first of all, you get an education from an ABET accredited school. So like I went to New Mexico State University in Las Cruces. There's a University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, Texas Tech in Lubbock. But you go to these schools, and that makes you eligible to take a test after you work for people. So what it takes is you go get a degree. My degree took me 5 years to get my bachelor's and 2 more to get my master's. I went to college for 7 years. And I'll tell you what, it was hard. It took a long time. Can y'all imagine going to school 7 more years after high school? Does that sound like fun? No, it was really hard. But one thing I would like to kind of mention to you all is that it was the same idea for me. I didn't really want to go to college as much, just like you. It was a business decision, and I knew I had to figure out something that I was good at and could make a living and have a good life, really. So it's important that you know that I didn't plan this all out. I kind of just followed what I was good at, got the scholarships. And so to get into what it would take to do engineering, I went through school, and then you have to work for licensed professionals for 4 years. So it took me 10 years to get my license, which was a long time. That felt like forever. And so that's what it usually takes. And to work in buildings and construction and what I do, you have to get your own license. For electrical engineers, a lot of my friends, they worked for like Hewlett-Packard, HP, who else? Dell. And for those professions, it's not as important to get your own license. They can deal with you not getting it. So licensure isn't exactly required for you to practice as an engineer, but to practice on your own, you do have to have it. And so, let me think here. So really, you have a combination of going and getting your education and then working under licensed professionals that will sign off for you. I had to have 5 people sign off for me to be allowed to take my engineering exam. And you have to pass your professional engineering exam to get your professional engineering license, which I do have. Licensure is by state. So I have my license in New Mexico and Texas. Most of my work is in Texas, actually. So it's kind of odd. The internet, when I was your age, the internet wasn't a big thing. I remember them bringing, oh man, this is hilarious. I think I was in 7th grade here at Taylor, And they brought in a computer on a, like what y'all think of as a computer, and it was just like the newest thing ever. We were looking at it like, kind of like, wow, this is crazy. And now y'all have tablets and laptops, right, for a class. It's pretty amazing. So things have moved along. They moved along quite a bit, really. And so looking back and thinking of where you are now to where I am now, I didn't plan all of those things, but I followed what I was good at and kind of followed where jobs might be. Are any of you interested in engineering? You are? Okay. Do you know what kind of engineering you're interested in? That's fair enough. Well, like I was talking to you about earlier, I didn't think I understood the differences in the disciplines till I got through college and took the classes. One great thing about engineering is there's a lot of overlap. So I can have an electrical engineer start working for me, learn what I do, and I can work with them to get their own license and work for me. Some common fields. Here's some facts that are interesting. Do you know what the most common degree among CEOs and leaders of business is? So usually what you would think for business owners, the leader of the business, is that they'd have a business degree. But engineering is the most common degree for most CEOs. And I didn't know that till after I got my degree, but I thought that was interesting. And so one thing that would happen, kind of describe what your typical path might be, is that once you graduate from Lovington, you'd pick a college. So I went to New Mexico State in Las Cruces. I was there 7 years. In the past, you work for a big firm because you got to have experience to get your license. So I lived in Phoenix for 4 years. Got my license there. Nowadays, it's hard to do that because people are not wanting to go to the office and work. We work online. And that's how I'm able to be in Lovington on my own near my family, is that I got enough experience to start my own company. And the way I ended up here was that the industry, they were building a lot of construction, like doing all kinds of buildings and homes in Phoenix and across the country. And about 2009, there was a big financial issue, like collapse across the country. And they let go of most everybody. And I got lucky because I left my job there. And I had enough experience to have my license. So I was able to start my own company in Lovington. And so what I did when I came back was worked with my dad in a construction company and got my license and have built my company up to what it is now. And so it took a little bit, and I'm lucky that I got to work in construction because it helped me understand what construction took. So we would build some buildings and do that type of thing. One thing that kind of related to what I do is that my brother is my drafter, and he's the one that gets on the computer and draws in AutoCAD and Revit and models what our drawings would be for these different buildings, right? And so I don't personally do that. I have a drafter that does that for me. So I have him help me do that. And we're lucky because we can use the internet and communicate and email each other and coordinate. On my way here, I got a call from an architect from Lubbock about a project. Called and took care of a few things, but this internet thing has made it to where I can be in one place and do projects far away. And there was a time in Phoenix while I was working, we're at a project in LA and a project in New York at the same time. So it's kind of neat that you could have kind of things going across, have projects going on at different sides of the country. So that was kind of odd. But anyways, kind of talk to you about the path a little bit. Let me tell you about what we do for building construction. And we can look at this room as an example. Um, so an architect would potentially draw this up, and he would give me a floor plan, and we call them architectural plans, but the size and what it looks like from the outside and the inside, and we would put together the structural plans from which it would be built. So just for strength. I don't make it look pretty or anything, but what I can do is I would design the footings that are underneath these walls. These walls are 8-inch cinder block, and they have rebar periodically, and they're filled with concrete. Above this is a drop ceiling, so this is fake. Above that would be open web steel joist, probably with a structural deck. And we draw that all in the program, and we print the plans out. In the past, nowadays we mostly email plans to each other. And we draw that all up and design it as part of a complete set for the entire building. And that's submitted to the state for a permit, and the contractor uses that to build from. So we do our piece of the entire structure, but then the mechanical engineers do their plans to get all of the ductwork in, to keep it heated and cooled. The plumbing engineer would make sure all of the bathrooms are working right, and the fountains, and if there's a kitchen or anything like that. But really, I make sure the footings are strong enough, the walls are strong enough, and the associated connections, so welds, nails, screws. We specify all that in the plans, and they put it together, and it gets inspected through the building process, and then y'all get to use it for a classroom or a gym or a restaurant, whatever it's used for. So, is there any questions that y'all would have about what I do? Do I enjoy my job? I do. I enjoy the parts of my job, but there's certainly it's still work. They call it work for a reason. So I like it, and I like that I get to be here near my family. I get to be part of picking up Lexi, dropping her off, coaching. So I like it, but it's still work, and it's hard and it's stressful, but it's worth it to me. Yes, sir.
Is your license nationwide, or do you have to get state licensure?
Good question. My license is by state, and so you can get them across the country, and I'm licensed in New Mexico and Texas, but you can get them across the country and even kind of worldwide. Practically, though, I work with whatever closest, and it's kind of a pain to keep up with licenses, so you have to only get what you probably use. But at the company that I worked for to get my license, they were licensed in every state, and Puerto Rico and a couple other places. So, yes, Serenity.
How much money do you generally make?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, I was pulling up stats because it's kind of hard to say. So, from what I had seen, they say the average salaries go from about $61,000 to $144,000, right? After 2 years of experience, it might be $75,000. After 10 years, they say you make about $232,000 a year. I've been able to do pretty well. I mean, if you're 5 to 10 years into your career and you get your own license, you're not going to be making less than $150,000 a year. That's for sure. And it's actually a hard thing right now. Across the country, you can't find help. So it's really hard to get people to move without paying them a lot of money. So, easily you're going to be making over $100,000 a year pretty quick. So, does that answer what you're wondering? And to kind of go with that, what's fair to Serenity, this is kind of interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit. I work project by project. So I could finish a bunch this week and not do any this next month. I'm pretty fortunate. I stay pretty busy. So I don't get a salary like a government job. And so you can do great and bad, but I mean, I'm doing really well now. But the thing is, it took a while to get there. So there's benefits to both, you know. So just corral. Yes, I do. Well, I'll tell you what, I like coaching. I tried coaching this past year, and I coached Lexi in basketball and my younger daughter in softball, and I thought that was so fun. I loved it. And I'll be honest with you, the hobbies, that's a really good question, because that's really, I like to do structural engineering, but I also like to do other things outside of that, and with my family and my kids and myself. I like to play guitar. I play guitar in a band with my daughter Lexi. We play around. My dad's in the band. My brother's in the band. I get to act like I'm young like y'all. But that's a good question, because to me, I feel like my job is it can be pretty stressful. So it's important to have all these other things that I do, because, you know, work isn't always fun, you know, I mean, but also it's worth it, because I get to do all these things now. Yes, ma'am. How many hours do I work? What, in a day, a week? What do you think? In a day? Well, I have to put at least 8 to 10 hours, but this is an interesting thing. I'll tell you about let's talk about my typical work day. Is that fair enough? Okay. So my typical work day, I'm really a problem solver. So they have issues on every project, I'm thinking about it. And I get my drafter to draw up the solutions to that. So you know what's interesting? I'm always thinking about the solutions to what's going on. And I've always got a couple things that I'm figuring out. So I kind of don't really shut it down, but I can be out and about thinking about things and figuring out what we're going to do. So I work early. I'm always up by 5 working. And then I stay up thinking about things. So I have to put in at least an 8 to 10 hours a day to get anything done. But it really kind of never ends. You know, like, you can't stop thinking about what's going on, you know. So, and that's just how it is, you know. But I'm fortunate, because I don't have to sit 8 to 5. I can work this in as long as I'm getting things done. And I like that a lot. And that's how I'm able to fit in talking to y'all today. And other things like that is I'm not exactly on a set schedule, but I am typically available 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. And really, in construction, because it's early, more like, you know, 6 a.m. to noon, that's when all the calls are made, probably. Yes, sir. I don't get overtime. I'm my own boss. Like, so it's kind of interesting. So I'm a business owner, and so and I'm from Lovington. There's no one to call here that's going to really help me out, you know, like out of situations and whatnot. So there's not really overtime. But what happens is let me give you an example of how I get paid, really. An architect has a new building that they're going to build, doing a project in Brownfield for the schools, a new office building. And so I write a proposal, and really what I'm saying is, hey, you pay me this much for designing your project. And when it's done, I send them an invoice, and they pay me for it, right? So I don't get paid monthly or anything like that. I get paid when I get checks in for actual projects that I get done. So really, as a business owner, there's no overtime for me. Whoever I hire, I would give them overtime, though. So does that answer your question? And I hire more drafters. That's what I would hire. And they do have to put in overtime sometimes. Yes, sir. Typical day? Well, I get up. This is a good question because I can work on my own schedule to a certain degree, but I get up early because construction happens early. So I'm up by 5 every day. Right when I get to my computer, I get going, and I can start responding to emails and getting things done in the designs I need. So I get through my day, but I get Lexi and Olivia to school. Then I come and talk to you like this. And then I go back home and address things. And luckily, in this day and age, when I have my phone, I can be responding to things wherever I am. So, but I try not to really do too much after 5, 6 p.m. by habit. But sometimes I am doing that, you know, a lot like I'm sure the teachers are too, you know, like they have you think they have a set schedule, but I don't think it really ends all the time for them. Yes, ma'am. Why? It was a combination of like what I was decent at. You know, once I realized I wasn't going to be the quarterback for the Denver Broncos, I was like, what else could I do? It was like probably not going to play guitar for Pearl Jam. You know, kind of had to kind of figure out what's kind of reasonable. And luckily, you know, my parents are teachers and contractors, right? And so the way I ended up doing it, I ended up going to school in Tatum for high school, and they had an engineering contest, WERC, this environmental engineering contest. And Tatum would do real well. Somehow, little Tatum, we did awesome, okay, and went to New Mexico State. And so we just happened to be there. And so I was your age, and I started doing those competitions in New Mexico State. I did FFA in Tatum, which was odd because my family didn't do that. The competitions were at New Mexico State. So I kept ending up at New Mexico State and Las Cruces for different things. And I started talking to people, and they just told me, you should be an engineer. You should be an engineer. It's like, okay. It's kind of hard to describe what that is. So I just started going to school there, not really knowing which engineering I was going to be doing. And once I ended up kind of figuring out what I could do, I got to work as a student for an engineer there. And I was really lucky because he kind of took me to the side. And my first year of college, I was in engineering technology. That was my major, right? Which is not quite engineering. That's what it really is. And he kept telling me, he's like, you got to get into engineering, you know? And I was like, I don't know, man. And what was interesting was that he had to describe to me because I didn't understand what my job would be like. He's like, well, it'll be hard for you to get your own license. You'll always have to work for everybody else. Good chance people will get credit for the work you do. And you might not get paid like you're doing the work. So I bit the bullet and I did transfer into engineering, which was kind of a pain. And I didn't want to do it because it was more work. But that was the best decision I ever made. And I was lucky that I listened to him because my family doesn't know. They didn't know about that. And I ended up going into engineering. And honestly, like, the thing that's really interesting right now is that you can do different things. Like the most common type of city manager, like City of Hobbs manager, Albuquerque manager, they tend to be civil engineers because they manage roads and water utilities. It's possible for me to get my teaching license because I have my engineering license. So it's one of these degrees that allows, like, say, lateral movement. You know, like I could potentially do other things, and they'll hire you to do that. So I liked that. And so, because you know what, honestly, I didn't want to go to school wasn't exactly fun, but I knew it was a business decision. I didn't want to go back to school. That was kind of, I don't want to do it twice, you know. And I did have family members that went to school for something and then ended up going back and getting teaching degrees or something that ended up being useful for them. So I don't know anybody that used got their engineering degree and weren't able to make it professionally. But I know a lot of people that had other degrees that they had to go back to school or do things that they didn't go to college for. So, do any of you have questions about just college in general and what it takes? And does everyone here intend to go to college? Yeah. You know, like one thing for y'all that, let's talk about one thing that I think is important is that I remember I didn't know what to do, but you know what you will know? You know what not to do, and you shouldn't be idle. You should be out doing things and figuring out where you fit. And that was, I did that enough and got around enough people, and I ended up lucky and picked a good career. It has worked out for me now. And it means a lot for me to be here talking to y'all. I get to coach. I get to be around my kids. And that's kind of a common theme with all my engineer friends. We all have kids. We're all married. And we never talk engineering. We always are talking about our kids, and snowboarding's coming up, and we have a concert coming up, and all these other things. So, like, I would advise you to treat it as a business. You know, Corral, right? You're a treat yourself like a business. Corral Inc. You know, how are you going to make this work? Because I know all of you there's a spot for every one of you for sure out there. But it's hard to find it, you know. But to know what you're going to do, you're what, 12, 13, 14 years old and from Lovington. To kind of expect you to have all those answers is kind of hard on you all. But you also have some time to figure it out before 18. I say all of that, but y'all live in the internet era, so y'all know a lot more than I did about what was out there and the possibilities. But it's really fun. It's very fulfilling because money isn't everything. And you're going to get tired, and it's hard to find motivation to keep working and keep trying. It never ends. I still have to take classes to keep my license. So it has never ended. But I'm happy that I don't have to go back to school. So I don't blame you for thinking that, you know, get it over with. Whatever you're going to do. And then you'll never have to go back, hopefully. Yes, ma'am.
What are some of the tools that you use?
What are some of the tools that we use? Probably the biggest tool is we use AutoCAD on the computer for design purposes. And that's what my drafter puts all of our ideas on paper in AutoCAD on the computer. Is that what you're asking?
Also, do you have to buy it
Buy it?
with your own money?
Absolutely, I do. As my own company, yes. Yeah, I do. Yes, sir.
Travel much in your job?
You know, not too much. I'm pretty lucky that I don't have to travel that much because of the internet. That's why. Anything else? Yes, sir.
What was your favorite subject in school?
My favorite subject was math. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever thought of giving up?
Have you ever thought of what? Giving up? I'd give up if I won the lottery, but you know, no, I don't think so. I guess it'd be, to be honest, probably thought about it, but it just never seemed like something that I wanted to do. To kind of go along the lines of that, I'll give you what I think you're asking about. Engineering, going into school, wasn't fun. It was hard. And guess what? I had a bunch of roommates that were non-engineers, and they were having a good time. So it was tempting for me to transfer out of engineering because my very first semester, I had a class at 6:45 in the morning. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow. I was like, is it going to be like this the rest of college, you know? And it wasn't, by the way, but I would have, not that early. But I didn't pick my right major the very first semester. For my first year, I was in engineering technology, which there's nothing wrong with that degree, but I didn't really understand how licensure worked. And I had someone that I worked for explain it to me. And I did come to a crossroads because I either needed to transfer into engineering, which was more difficult, it required more, or I was thinking about becoming, going into business or getting an education major because it was going to be easier than the engineering degree, right? And I decided, and I was worried, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do well with it. I really don't know. And I decided engineering, and it worked out for me well. It doesn't mean the other option wouldn't have worked out well, but I didn't know that. So as far as looking for an easier path, oh yeah. And I mean, why would I take the harder path if there's an easier one? I mean, so, but it's been for sure worth it. I mean, I've got lucky in a lot of ways. You know, I just kind of knew that if I'd work hard and put enough into it, it would work out. Yes, ma'am.
What job would you do if you didn't?
What would I do? Okay, I love music. I love to play music. That's what I would like to do. I like writing music. Wish I could do more like that. But you know, and that's something else I like a lot now. I love coaching. I kind of thought I would always like that, and I do. I really love coaching. I like to be busy and doing a lot of things.
No more questions?
Anybody else?
Last one. What's the most satisfying thing about your job?
Satisfying. That it feels useful, like we're able to help and contribute, like, and see things get built. Here's a nickel knowledge thing. They always told me in school that you won't get to build what you design, right? My first project I ever stamped, I built it with my dad. By chance. I mean, like, in a way, that's kind of to know statistic, that was an odd thing to happen, but I couldn't believe that happened. So it's fulfilling to see things go up. You know, I like that. So we can go look at a building and I can tell my daughter, hey, I built that or whatever. So I like that. You can help a lot of people around the world. Let me tell you about something that's fulfilling. There's a thing called Habitat, what's it called? Bridges to Prosperity. And there's a couple of other organizations. But there's groups of engineers that go to other countries from New Mexico State. And they went to Guatemala, and they installed water wells for a village of people who had no running water at all. And so as groups, this is common. Bridges are a thing in a lot of third world countries where at parts of the year it keeps them from other parts of the country. Like, so they can't even get to like hospitals or schools or anything like that. And so it's pretty common for retired engineers or engineers and their kids to go to other countries and take on getting water and other things to these people that really need a lot of help. And I think that's a really neat thing that I would like to do one day. So, anything else?
Okay. What do you guys tell Mr. Lamb? Thanks for being here, right?
Thank
All right,
you.
Let's give him one more round of applause and then take our picture.
Oh, picture.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.